How the heck are you supposed to fit 300 plus pages of a novel into a one-page, single-spaced, Times New Roman 12 font? My name is Riley K. Jones. I'm a writer, teacher, and author tuber, and today we're going to talk about how to write a synopsis. Specifically, how to write a thriller synopsis. This video was inspired by Alexa Dunn's video on synopsises, so I encourage you guys to check that out. She does a great job of giving more details into the general book synopsis, which I will highlight briefly, and how does that book synopsis apply to thrillers. So I have linked that down below, so go feel free to check it out. First off, what is a synopsis? A synopsis is an overarching summary of your entire book. And a synopsis is not a book blurb. You're not trying to just tease the people, tease an audience into what you're hinting at and what might happen in your book. It's more of a spoiler, like everything that happens in the synopsis. You tell them everything. It's the overarching plot and the overarching character arc. What does a synopsis look like? A synopsis should be roughly 500 to 700 words. I know that's like, wait, I have like a 70,000 plus word book. How do I boil that down to 500 to 70 words? Yes, so that boils also down into roughly 1 to 2 pages, single space, Times New Roman, size 12 font. So how do you at all do that for a thriller? How does this translate to thriller? Because when we're looking at thrillers, we know that if we're writing these thrillers, that everything that you mention is somehow loosely connected to the end. Like, you're laying clues, you're layering ideas and concepts and motifs and themes to see how it all comes out together at the end. Like, every scene that you have crafted should in some way impact that third act, impact the end. So how do you summarize all of that into 500 to 700 words? First, I do suggest, if you need to do this, you don't have this written all down already, I suggest that you just write it out, like play by play, summarize each big huge plot point and each big, maybe even each chapter. Start there to see what your book is about, and then see what you've broken down to its basics, nuts and bolts. I found that was very helpful for me when going through a second draft to see, does everything, yes, tie in together? The end, is there anything that are similar or that aren't actually meeting my goal to tie everything to the end? So could I combine those types of concepts? I really found helpful just writing it out all at once and not worrying too much about word count or page number. Second, after you've done this, take a day or two, just relax, don't think about it too much, just give yourself a break, and then come back a day or two, a week later with a fresh set of eyes to help you see what's important, what's not important. Third, I suggest checking out Susan Dennard's blog post on how to break down a synopsis. I have put a link down in the description so you guys can check that out. Alexa Dunn sent us that tip in her video and it really is awesome, so really check that resource out. It helped me so much to see. In her blog post, just to kind of briefly summarize, she highlights the synopsis in following a hero's journey.
So as you can see in the screen, we have the plot points laid out from the hero's journey, from opening image, protagonist intro, inciting incident, plot point 1, etc., etc. I also modified it a little bit to include some thriller beats, like the climax 2.0, and then the black moment is really just the dark night of the soul. So you can kind of modify this a little bit more and tweak it to make it fit your thriller plot points. That's what I suggest doing, and then you can go through and start filling in all the information.
And then next, I'm going to go through and summarize each plot point and give about a 2 to 3 sentence summary of each point. You can have it be a little longer than 2 to 3 sentences, but beware that each sentence counts. It's going to count toward that word goal. So there might be times when you go back through revision, you might see, can we tighten up this sentence? Can we say the same thing in a fewer amount of words? So as you go through, here are some tips to funnel that information of like knowing what information to include for a thriller. As I mentioned before, does the information tie to the end result? For a thriller, everything should somehow be tied to the end goal. Like everything is being wrapped up. So how do you do this for a thriller and not end up with a 10-page summary like me? Here's what we need to work on. So you've already written out all of your synopsis, right? You have kind of summarized it all, and you may have that 6 to 8 pages. Keep this in mind that conciseness is key. Focus on the main plot. If you have any subplots involved with a friendship, romance, parent relationships, try to keep it to the bare minimum. Try not to include those types of subplots and just focus mainly on the mystery, because your book is thriller or mystery. It's not a romance novel. It's not a friendship novel. It could be about those things. It has those subplots, but to meet that word count goal, we gotta really trim it down. So remove any subplots and keep the basic mystery and reveals going. If you have like minor reveals or minor scaly twists, that might be something that you have to consider later on to see how far you are in the word count, to see if you really need them. When myself and my mentor Brittany was going through my synopsis for Project Lost, which is a YA thriller, we had to do that. We had to cut some things out just because we didn't have the room to do so. What we ended up doing was we summarized all of it into all of those little minor twists and turns. Instead of doing a direct play-by-play of like all of these things happen, we try to summarize it in a single sentence. So in A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, for example, Pip continues to get more threat letters. So this kind of detail does happen multiple times throughout the novel, and you could see like here she might have gotten like one and then things happen and then she got another one. Instead of detailing all that out, we can just summarize and just say Pip continues to get more threat letters. This detail brings down several different chapters into a single sentence, so that way you have more words to expand on the actual plot. This type of conciseness is what you're going to need. You might have to be vague about some other minor characters that may in fact help your mystery plot, but you just don't have the word count to kind of explain their backstory and how they're all tied in. Like instead of naming who Jenny is and kind of giving her a brief explanation on her backstory and why she's important, you might just explain she's a classmate of your main character, or whatever role she is, the barista of the main character, gives the main character a clue. Saying just like briefly who that person is, not even mentioning their name, this will save you from having to dive too deeply into Jenny and free up your word count to explain the actual plot. The other thing that I suggest doing is to focus on your verbs and your descriptors. So really hone in on your verbs and descriptors and see how you can maybe get rid of some of those, because we're not writing purple prose, we're not writing that fancy atmospheric feel anymore. We're just blatantly telling things. That might be hard for you as opposed for me. I love to show and get that feeling out and be like, this is how this works. So telling and just being short and sweet to the point was a harder skill set for me. But as I was learning through this, writing my synopsis, I found if I had multiple verbs, like for example, here we have Katniss sprints away from the careers, searches for Peeta, and stumbles upon him in a swamp. That's way too descriptive for a synopsis. It's too much play-by-play. So we could briefly just cut that down to Katniss outruns the careers and finds Peeta camouflaged in a swamp. The first example that I gave is 16 words, and the second example is 11 words. So we were able to cut out 5 words, which is going to be super impactful for you in your word count for your synopsis. You've done this a couple times. Take a look back to see if you can still cut and make it simpler overall until you get that desired result. So you're gonna have to do multiple revisions of this, okay? Do I really need to know that Katniss is outrunning the careers in this? Can I summarize this even further? Do I have to mention that Peeta is hiding in a swamp? Like, do I even have to mention that he's camouflaged? Or can I just say that Katniss finds Peeta? Another key thing to keep in mind here is just that practice makes perfect. So the more you do this, the more you're gonna get better at it. Just like any skill in writing that you have tried to learn, you just need to practice that skill and keep going and doing it over and over again will help you. It will probably take you several revisions to cut down on your synopsis. So don't just be like, oh, I wrote it, I'm done. Like, really sit, really think about it. If you're anything like me, you'll notice that it's just a skill that you need to learn, and you will fail a couple of times, you'll make a few mistakes, but as you learn through that, you will improve and get better. I also suggest that you look to someone who can read it for you, preferably someone who doesn't know the book at all, so that way you can see if they have any questions, if you didn't explain it very well, if they're like, I don't know anything about this plot, like this thing stuck out to me and left me with a huge question that disconnected me from the rest of the summary, or if you're like, yeah, I followed it all, that would be good. If you do have someone who has read your book and knows that they can also be like a good person to kind of lean to be like, is there anything I'm missing from my summary that you would think would be more necessary for the plot itself? So having someone in both camps is really helpful when looking through your synopsis. And that is everything I have for this video. So just to recap, that 1, does everything that you are mentioning in your synopsis make it to the end. 2, conciseness is key, working down to cutting those words. And 3, that practice does make perfect. So if you keep those tools in mind while you're writing synopsis, I guarantee that you will have a better synopsis altogether. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And if you have any other questions about the writing process, in a publishing process, in any of those things, when it comes to revisions or drafting or writing and prepping for querying, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please make sure to give this video a nice big thumbs up. It lets me know that you like videos like this one. And if you haven't already, click subscribe. I release all new videos on all things writing and reading every Thursday. Thank you guys so much again for watching. Keep writing, keep reading, and stay creative. Bye!